We kind of turned around and this huge, what we thought was basically it was a water spout, kind of like a tornado in the water, came by, hit our kayak and flipped us over in 38-degree weather.
Episode 341, mountain climber, adventure racer, life coach, and cancer survivor Rob Harsh joins us.
I believe that adventure sports will improve your health. I believe that adventure sports will improve your outlook on life. I believe that adventure sports will build community, heal families, and inspire children. I believe that adventure sports will improve this planet. And I believe that adventure is fun. Travis and I created the Adventure Sports Podcast because we believe that adventure sports can make a real difference in this world. The Adventure Sports Podcast creates joy, health, purpose, relationships, memories, and second chances. Do you believe? It is our goal in the new year to double the number of listeners to ASP. Why? To double the good the show is doing. We started this show on the last day of February nearly 3 years ago. So by the last day of February this year, we will be celebrating double the joy, double the health, double the memories, and double the second chances. This is our challenge to you. Do you believe? Join with us. Tell others about the show. Tell them about the 340-plus episodes of stories, examples, and inspiration. Tell them about this resource that is there for them to explore and encounter. Kickstart their adventure. Kickstart a life.
You're listening to the Adventure Sports Podcast, brought to you by 180 Tech. We talk with adventurers from around the globe to bring you the inspiration and motivation you need to get started in the outdoors or to keep you moving if you're already there. Now here's your host, Kurt Linville.
Hi, friends. Thanks again for joining us on the Adventure Sports Podcast. Boy, am I excited about today's guest. We have Rob Harsh here. Rob is a life coach. He is a business where he guides people on transformative, life-changing adventures. Rob has climbed mountains all over the world. He's done over 50 adventure races. He's one of the people that has lived the adventure-focused lifestyle for many, many years, one of the true experts in the field. And just one more tidbit that's very interesting is Rob also overcame stage 4 lung cancer, and I want to hear how he did that because I think it will reveal a lot about who Rob is and what he means by transformation. So, Rob, welcome to the program.
Hey, Kurt, it's really great to be here.
Man, it's our honor. We're excited to hear about your business, your life, your adventures. There's so much to cover, and I mentioned this before you hit record. It's always tough to do an interview with someone like you who has done so much, because all we could do is hit the highlights or dive in just one adventure. But really, what caught my eye as I was looking over your material is how you help other people get into real adventure, and you do it in a way that's kind of unique and transformative. So maybe we can dive into that in just a minute. But before, let's get the backstory. So you live in Boulder now, is that correct?
Yep, living in the Rocky Mountains.
Boulder, Colorado. And you've been doing this adventure-focused lifestyle for how long now?
Oh my God, my whole life, really 30 years, since I was a kid, living and growing up in Chicago and camping all through the Midwest to really going out and start exploring, the world, as a young adult and getting involved in adventure sports and climbing and mountain biking and running. And I just kept doing what I was passionate about. And it's kind of led me down this really interesting, amazing road in my life.
It's fascinating when I get to visit with someone like you who's just lived it for so long. And it, like I said, it makes it hard to know where to start. But what would you say is your first real adventure sport, something that just grabbed you and you were crazy passionate about?
Really, I think adventure racing and ultra running are really something I've been very passionate about in my life. When I'm on one of my very first trips outside the United States, I had the great honor of going and traveling to Nepal and visiting the Khumbu region of the Himalayas and going to Everest Base Camp and climbing a bunch of mountains. And it's really interesting because, at that time, I really thought I wanted to be a mountaineer. I wanted to climb big mountains, and I just something about the mountains that really attracted me. And that trip was really hard, and I really struggled with the altitude. But during that trip, I read this book called "Surviving the Toughest Race on Earth." And it was about this race called the Raid Galois, which was a French race. And it was kind of the original eco challenge. In fact, the eco challenge was kind of the American version of the Raid Galois. And I came back from that trip and I said, this is it. This is what I want to do. So I just started looking around for races that I could do in the Midwest. And, within a couple months, I was doing my first 24-hour adventure race. And interestingly enough, so this was a race called the Pathfinder Challenge in Wisconsin. And, I got to the end of that race and I looked at one of my teammates and I said, okay, let's go do the Eco Challenge. And he just kind of looked at me and he said, "You're crazy, man. Like that's way beyond anything that I want to do. Maybe I could do that in a few years, but that's over my head." And I said, "Okay, I'm going to go do the Eco Challenge." And I just went out and I really just started pursuing it. And I just started meeting more people and finding people who were really engaged in the sport. And I think that's the one thing, looking back on it now, is I met so many incredible people along this journey. I mean, adventure seekers, people who go out and explore the world and play. I mean, it's like playing. I mean, we're being kids. We're just, we're playing adults, but we're going out and playing in the world. And I've met so many incredible people. And I have so many friendships through this sport and experience, and it's something that I've cherished for almost 3 decades of my life.
Neat stuff. Hey, do you know Robin Benincasa?
I do know Robin, yes.
I thought you might. She's been on the show, and we really love to hear about her adventure racing. Did you ever race with her?
No, I never raced with her. I always competed alongside her. And this was the thing I also really loved about adventure racing is that, you race side by side with the elites.
Oh, yeah.
There were these, I mean, through the years, I don't know if I ever really classified myself as an athlete. I think my goal in all of these events was always to get out there and finish. We have that drive to compete and to win, but in adventure racing, it was a different mindset. It was really just about being out there, and this was even with the lead teams. I mean, there was this nature where there was friendly competition, but there was also help. Like, if there was a team struggling, their bike broke down or something was going on with one of their teammates. I mean, you stopped and you helped that team. And if somehow that always came back around, either in that race or in another race, I mean, the friendly nature of adventure racing it just blew me away. So I think at one point I remember, I think Robin, she was doing some race and she was looking for some piece of equipment, and I drove out to San Diego and I donated a piece of equipment for her to do a race. And so yeah, she's an amazing, inspiring person.
Yeah, that's neat. That's neat. One more name for you. How about Yari Kirkland Hyatt?
Yeah, I know Yari. Yeah, she's from Crested Butte.
That's right. Yep. So Yari was on the
Yeah.
show about a year ago, something like that, talking about adventure racing. So this kind of illustrates a point, Rob, and it's something that I say a lot, but I love to be able to show people what I'm talking about. When you get into an adventure sport and you start enjoying it and doing it, suddenly a community develops around it. People with a like interest. It's not just about climbing a mountain, right? It's about the people and the friendships, the amazing relationships that you make along the way. And so it's fun that you've met these same people that, unrelated, but through your sports, we know the same people. And it just illustrates the point, I think, that adventure sports really do build community. And here's something for you. Endurance racing, ultra running, these adventure races that you've done, these are things that make someone dig really, really deep. And you can't maintain a facade in your personality when you're digging that deep. You get to know the real, the raw, who the person really is. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying. I mean, this was something about adventure racing, and something that I was really successful at doing was you really have to be wise in picking your teammates, because somewhere along the way, it's like peeling an onion, these layers, peel away, and what's left is, the core of who you are. And some people reach that point and they break down, or some people reach that point and they go beyond. And it's powerful to experience that, because when you're in an adventure race, a 10-day long race, I mean, a great example, is this race I did in Patagonia called the Patagonia Expedition Race. And, this was some years after I'd been racing, and after, Eco Challenge had kind of gone by the wayside and there was no longer Red Gawa. But this was a really raw adventure through the wilds of Patagonia. I mean, Patagonia is unreal. I mean, there's very few roads and trails, and you're just out in the wilderness navigating river valleys and mountain ridges, and it's just raw. And you're out there alone in this wilderness with three other people, and you're going nonstop. I mean, we only slept a couple of hours a day in these races, and there was a moment on. This is actually the very first day of the race, where we had mountain biked around Torres del Paine, through the national park, around the towers, and we had gotten to a place where we jumped in kayaks and we were paddling down from this river from the White Glacier, and it was something like a 90-kilometer paddle. And at the end of this paddle, it spit us out into this basically this narrow fjord. And Patagonia is really known for wind and weather, and it can turn on a dime. And so we get to the end of this river, and it's opening up into this fjord, and lo and behold, there's a storm blowing in. And we're kind of battling some waves and some wind, and it's cold down there. I think the water was 38 degrees, and there was literally icebergs, in this area. And we were thinking, okay, we're going to come around this headland and come around the corner, and we're going to find some shelter from the wind. And we come around this corner, and it's just a melee. I mean, it's like 2 to 3 meter breaking waves. The winds are picking up, and we're realizing, this isn't like paddling, a lake back at home where, you come around the corner and you're sheltered from the wind. The wind's actually funneling through the fjord.
Wow.
And so we get to a point, where it's pretty raw, and we'd gotten split up a little bit. We're still within sight of one another, but we're a team of four in two double sea kayaks, and out of nowhere, we heard this noise, and it was like a freight train. And we kind of turned around, and this huge, what we thought was basically it was a water spout, kind of like a tornado on the water, came by, hit our kayak and flipped us over in 38-degree weather. And it was probably one of the times in my life, in one of these adventures, where I lost it a little bit. But the beauty of that situation is that within minutes, my teammates were right there, and engaged in supporting and ensuring that we were safe. The conditions were such where it was very difficult for us to self-rescue. There was actually a Coast Guard cutter, basically a 55-foot Chilean Navy vessel that was supporting the race. And they basically came and launched Zodiac boats and pulled us out of the water.
Wow.
So it turns out basically every team got rescued that day except for maybe one team. And that team was lucky enough to beat the storm. So this gets to this point where, you have to choose the people that you surround yourself with in life well.
Oh, yeah.
Because when you get to those moments, where you're struggling with adversity or just, dealing with everyday life, I mean, you really want good friends and good people around you. So adventure racing really taught me that lesson.
Yeah, no doubt about it. One thing I've been saying frequently on the show is that when you find your adventure, you begin challenging yourself. And for some people, that challenge is kind of mundane. They're just getting started, but it's still real for them, and they're really getting that challenge. For other people, it gets more and more extreme, and their challenges are bigger and bigger. But the point is this: it's the challenge that I think it's transformative. And what you're talking about, that's really what it's about. It doesn't mean you have to be on a kayak in the middle of hurricane force winds and in icy water, right? It means that you have to challenge yourself. And when you do that, you learn something about yourself. And that's part of the beauty of adventure. Yeah.
Well, Friedrich Nietzsche had this quote. It says, when you find your why, you can survive anyhow. So when you find your reason or your passion in life, it can carry you through any circumstance in life. And so, adventure racing and adventure in general taught me a lot about overcoming adversity through following your passion in life. It's like, you can argue back and forth. In fact, I have this ongoing debate. It's like this decade-long chess match that you have with a buddy. But I've had this ongoing debate whether there's purpose or no purpose in this life that we lead. And, he's a proponent that there's no purpose, and I'm a proponent that there's purpose. And it's the friendliest kind of chess match you could ever have. But it's an interesting debate. Whether there is purpose to this experience or not, in my mind, doesn't matter. It's the meaning that we place on it. And I think, going out and being in the outdoors and pursuing sport, pursuing adventure, or just pursuing being in the outdoors and finding, the beauty that this world has to offer, it provides us meaning. And I think it's that meaning that helps us get through the other parts of our life. So when we go on, a big trip and explore a new place, we come back transformed in some way. And that transformation, I believe, gives us greater meaning in our lives and being able to tackle all the challenges that we face in everyday life. Because let's face it, this world is complicated, and getting through everyday existence can be really hard. but I really believe that going out and pushing yourself, having a goal, and I don't think it matters whether you achieve the goal or not. In fact, I think I'm a big proponent of failure. I think failure is healthy. I think failure is needed. I think we learn a lot from failure. So just having a goal and going out and pursuing it is valuable and provides meaning in our lives.
Yeah, I agree completely. I picked up some key words, kind of a quote about your business, and I wanted to dive into those a little bit. Personal growth and transformation through three key words here: mindfulness, adventure, and embracing adversity. And I think that's kind of what we're getting into. What do you mean by mindfulness?
Well, I think mindfulness is kind of a path towards true intelligence. We live in a world where we're all trying to, we're kind of addicted to information. We've got Google at our fingertips, and we can basically go out and find out any piece of information that we want. But I have an argument that says sometimes, that's detrimental. Filling our heads with knowledge and information can actually be limiting. But through this process of mindfulness, and being in the moment, and feeling and experiencing the moment and reacting to the moment, we learn things about ourselves that we can't learn through the Google.
Sure.
It's this idea of knowledge versus experience, and what results in actual true intelligence. So, you hear a lot about mindfulness. I practice meditation, but for me, it's more about the practical side. So when I take people on adventures, it is all about mindfulness. It is about exploration. It is about play. It is about experiencing yourself through the environment that you're in. And the outdoors is kind of raw sometimes. You experience all kinds of weather. When you go to a place like, I take people to Peru and we go to Machu Picchu, you have the culture that you experience, which is very different than the culture we have here. It's much slower. People go at a different pace of life. So there's delays. So how do you deal and react with delays? How do you deal and react with different cultures? So the mindfulness, so for me, it's beyond meditation. It's really experiencing, everything that life has to offer in this moment.
Being fully present right here, right
Yep.
now. It's official. Winter has arrived, and Bent Gate Mountaineering is prepared to help you get ready for your epic winter. Come check out the latest in alpine touring, telemark, NTN, and splitboarding gear. They have brands like Black Crows, DPS, Dynafit, G3, Icelantic, K2, Technica Blizzard, Arc'teryx, Mammoth, Solomon, Volley, Neversummer, Jones, and BCA. And you do need to be safe out there. Bentgate has the latest in avalanche safety gear. They have beacons, airbags, shovels, and probes, and they're ready to help you educate yourself on snow safety. They also rent out gear, so you can get your skis and your boots there, as well as your avalanche safety equipment. What's more, they also have free demo ski days at local resorts, so you can try out the latest gear. Now, how much fun does that sound? So swing by Bentgate in Golden, Colorado, or go to bentgate.com to find your new gear, as well as to get updates on all of their events. It's fun because a lot of people that come on the show talk about how their unique adventure sport, and it could be any of 100 different sports, right? But how their sport takes them there. And that's one of the things that they love about it. skiing, mountain biking, rock climbing, whatever it is, the challenge of the sport and pushing the envelope just a little bit focuses the mind. It gives you that laser focus that's necessary to be fully present in the moment. I've heard other people say, well, that's fantastic, but can't you live that way every day, right? In every way, instead of just when you're doing your sport. And what do you think about that? Do you think that we learn more about how to be present by experiencing it through sports?
Absolutely. I think that is the greater lesson. And it is a journey, and it is a journey through letting go and surrendering to certain things that might be driving us. For me, this seeking of adventure was kind of a double-edged sword. I realized that it truly was my passion in life, but there was an element too where I was seeking something more. There was an element maybe where I wasn't completely satisfied with my life as it was. I was out there seeking something more. So it's kind of like a distraction. But ultimately, the journey, I believe, comes full circle and helps you bring that mindfulness into everyday life and truly teaches you how to overcome adversity in everyday life. I mean, there's no way in my mind that I would be sitting here today without all of those experiences of adventure and overcoming adversity through sport.
I'm going to dig just one notch deeper on that. Why bother? Why bother to learn how to be mindful?
I think it gets at this quote that I said earlier, if you find your why, you can overcome any how. Life can be hard. It may be easy for you right now, but at some point it's going to be hard. We all lose our youth. We all, we all get old. We all transition into different parts of our lives, parts of family life and parts of our work life. And we're always facing and surmounting challenges. I think mindfulness is the ultimate tool. It's something that I teach very, very deeply in my coaching. It's integrated into everything that I do in terms of coaching. I think mindfulness is probably, in my mind, one of the greatest human skills that we can have. A lot of the way people experience their lives, is they aren't present. In their minds, their minds are stuck in the past or the future. So, when your thoughts are stuck in your past and the future, you're really never experiencing the now. And I think when you are truly in the now, you can tap into this passion. You can tap into this meaning in your life. And that passion, that meaning can propel you into anything you really choose to do. If you're stuck in your life right now, passion is the thing that can propel you out of that stuckness.
Yeah, well said. Very well said. Well, what about embracing adversity? And we got to talk about your bout with lung cancer. We've got to go there. But you mentioned embracing adversity as a key component to transformation.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
Yeah, so adversity to me is not something to be conquered. It's not something to be overcome. What I've learned very specifically is it's more of a surrendering. And I don't mean surrender like give up. I mean, it's a surrendering of yourself to your experience. I've done some pretty hard races. Probably one of the hardest races I've ever done is the Badwater Ultra Marathon, which is known as one of the toughest running races in the world, which is run on the hottest day. in Death Valley. It's 135 miles across Death Valley.
Oh,
And, you get out of your car in Death Valley and you feel like you've stepped into an oven. I mean, it's 125 degrees in Death Valley in July. And, you're about to embark on running 135 miles. And it's not flat. You have to cross three mountain ranges. And you end up at the portal of Mount Whitney, which is the highest mountain in the lower 48. So there, in that race, there were multiple times where I just had to surrender. I mean, you have to surrender to the heat. You have to surrender to the fact that your body does not operate the same at 125 degrees. I mean, for the first 50 miles, like my body didn't want to digest food, because, my body's like, well, I'm cooling your body, I'm powering your muscles, and I'm trying to digest food. Like, I can't do all three of those things, so I'm going to choose for you. And so you keep putting water and food in your body, and it just keeps your belly keeps growing, and you get this kind of balloon belly. And so, like, every mile, for the first 50 miles, I basically stuck my finger down my throat to, relieve my stomach of its contents. And eventually, I got to a point where, like, I'm just trying to figure out, like, well, what's gonna get me through this, And it's kind of funny story because the combination, I was sponsored by a nutrition company and I had all this fancy nutrition products and I trained with it and blah, blah, blah. And none of it worked. At the end of the day, the combination of what worked for me was Ensure, that canned protein drink,
right.
Ensure.
Yep.
And Red Bull. And I survived the bad water on Ensure and Red Bull.
Wow.
And like it's a surrendering, you get to a point where you're kind of like, your mind is like, or your body is saying, I can't go on, I can't go on, I can't go on. And, in my mind, I'm saying, yeah, you can. Your mind can overcome. And when your mind is telling your body that, your body surrenders and says, okay, I can deal with the pain. I can deal with the heat. I can deal with the uncomfortableness. And I know that at some point, this is going to end. And you just keep going. And at some point, you get to the end. And it's the greatest feeling you can ever experience. But like all things, then the moment is gone. And then you're just left with, the next moment.
Right. Learning how to embrace adversity had to be very important in your battle against lung cancer. Would you share that story with us?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough thing because how does somebody like me get lung cancer? Somebody who seems successful and healthy and fit. How does somebody like me get lung cancer? Is it chance? Is it fate? Is it karma? What is it? So in 2016, I just come back. I was actually living in Peru. I went down there to explore, and that's kind of where the passion and energy for my business started. Is trekking through the Andes Mountains, and I came back to the States, and I was sick. I got to a point where I was blood was coming up, coughing up blood out of my lungs, and my energy was off, and I couldn't run. And I started going to the doctors, and they didn't initially know. The doctors, they kind of go through this process where they're trying to figure out what it's not. So it took several months, but eventually I did get a scan after really arguing with the insurance companies back and forth, and I got a scan, and within about 10 minutes they found out that I had stage 4 lung cancer. Oh. And I not only had stage 4 lung cancer, I had the rarest form of lung cancer, which is something that affects about 5% of lung cancer patients. And it's the non-smokers' lung cancer. So, okay, that makes sense. I got the non-smokers version of lung cancer. So I think initially I was in shock for sure. I mean, you don't ever want to, you don't admit it, but I think looking back at it, I was certainly in shock. But something took over in me, and I remember gathering all my friends and family together, and I looked at them and I said, you know what, this lung cancer, may kill me. But undoubtedly, along the way, it has something to teach me. And my only mission in life right now is to learn what this illness has to teach me. And so instead of going in this direction it's like I said, when you peel those layers of the onion back and your core is exposed, some people either break or other people break through. And for me, it was a breakthrough. And it was a culmination of everything that I had experienced in my life that said, this cancer, I actually used the word, this is a gift. Mm. This is an opportunity for me to learn something in my life that few people will get a chance to learn. And so I took that idea of meaning and, this idea that, if you know your why, you can survive anyhow, and this is something that Viktor Frankl made famous in his book, A Man's Search for Meaning, and this is how he survived the Nazi concentration camps, and this was what his whole theory was about. And, I didn't know that that's what I was doing. I mean, somehow that's what, that's just what happened. And so I really just started moving forward and saying, okay, I'm going to treat this like an opportunity, and I'm going to move forward and learn what this has to teach me. And, if it kills me, it kills me. But, none of us get out of this life alive. There is an end. There may be something beyond that end. But it's eventually gonna end. So in the meantime, embrace the adversity and learn everything it has to offer you, between now and that moment when the end comes.
So in the end, you did overcome the lung cancer. What was it like when you found out that it was in remission, it was gone?
Well, I don't know if you're ever truly healed or cured from cancer. I mean, doctors will say that. I don't know if they just say that because they have to protect their liability. But one of the things that I did that was really unique is at one point the doctor had called me up. And he said, Rob, your latest scans show that the cancer is getting worse. And at that point, I was kind of following a dual approach. I was following kind of a alternative, holistic approach, through diet and and mindfulness and all the things that I'd learned in my life, and then following kind of a Western approach where I was taking this kind of checkpoint. It wasn't a checkpoint, and it's kind of one of these newer immunotherapy drugs, because there was absolutely no way in my mind that I was going to do chemo or radiation.
Okay.
And he said, the cancer's getting worse, and I really want you to consider doing chemo. And so I went out on a hike that day, and this was a point where, I got into a point where the cancer was so bad that my breathing was so bad that I couldn't even climb the stairs in my house. So I had fallen, from a very high level as an athlete to being barely able to walk. But this is what I knew how to do. I knew how to train. I knew how to put one step in front of the other. So, part of my approach to healing was to get out and walk and just do as much as I could do. And so I got this call from the doctor, and I went out and I went hiking up a little mountain near my house. It was in the winter, so it was snowing out. And I got to the top of this mountain, and I had a vision, and I don't know, I don't know if it was because of, what I was dealing with, was so intense, or, some of the approaches I was taking, but I was really open. So, I had this vision, and it was like it was happening right in front of me. And I had a vision that I saw myself guiding a group of people up a stone path above Machu Picchu. And it was in that moment that I decided that, if I am if this illness is gonna take me, I'm gonna do everything I can to go out and find meaning in this journey until that day comes. So I just decided to start walking and training to go guide a trip in Peru to Machu Picchu. I'd sold a trip as part of my business. I had an amazing group of 20 people from New Zealand who had put their faith in me and paid their money for me to guide them on this life-changing trip to Machu Picchu. And I decided that that's what I was going to try and do. So 4 months later, I found myself in Cusco, welcoming, these 20 amazing Kiwis from New Zealand on the trip of a lifetime. And, we got through this 2-week amazing trip, had a lot of laughs, had a lot of amazing food, amazing experiences. And in some way, it was almost like I forgot I had cancer. Because I'd put so much of my energy into my passion, and the passion was it wasn't just around adventure. There was a passion around really making a difference in these people's lives. I really wanted to give them something that they would remember, and something that they could use. Adventure had done so much for me in my life. I wanted it to do the same for other people. So we did this amazing trip and developed these amazing friendships and relationships. And I came back from Peru, and a couple of weeks later, I got a scan, and the tumor in my lung had disappeared.
That's just amazing. Just amazing. What a neat story, Rob. I love it. And so you're still doing the trips. You're taking people out and giving them these experiences of a lifetime. We should talk a little bit about how you do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so I'm not one of these big travel companies. I just don't offer, trips on demand. I have specific trips that I run, and specific dates. I work with specific groups of people. So we go, we do a lot of classic trips, like this Machu Picchu trip, but we don't take the standard route. We do a very off the beaten track route. There's very few tourists on the route. We go to some other ruins Like we go to Choqquequirao, which is another massive site, almost as big as Machu Picchu, but maybe only 70 people a day go there. And yeah, so the whole idea is kind of take these off the beaten track routes. We're not tourists, we're explorers, we're adventurers. So I treat all my clients like they're adventurers and explorers, and we go out and it's multidimensional. This is about doing something challenging. Some trips I have are harder than others, but they all have the same qualities. It's all about challenge. It's all about the culture. It's about service, so I try to incorporate service in every trip. A lot of times we'll work with a small village, and we'll go and we'll do some project at the school with these kids, and we'll do some kind of cultural exchange. We'll bring them school supplies. We'll support them in maintaining their infrastructure, and we develop a relationship with these people because these people who are living these simple lifestyles in these amazingly remote places around the world have something to teach us about mindfulness and meaning and following passion in life. Yeah, we may look at them and say, they're living a poor existence, but in many ways, they're so much richer than we are here in the United States. I mean, they have community. They have all these things that seemingly we've lost. And, so that's part of my trips, is to expose people to these ways of life that are totally valid. But they're completely outside of our, little, sphere, where we live in this modern world where, we're on the Google. So this is about going out and having an experience and bringing that experience back and applying that to, the challenges and the way you live your life every day.
Really, really cool. By the way, the website is awakenedadventures.com, and I have to compliment you on this. Rob, this is probably the best website that I have seen in the last year or more. The pictures, the way it's put together, it's beautiful. It's really, really good. So anyway, awakenedadventures.com. So if you're listening at home, jump on your laptop, your computer, you can look at this while I'm talking about it. But you also have a section on training. And this is part of your life coaching, I guess, just helping people to meet the challenges that they set before themselves. I see fitness training, mindfulness training, reclaiming your energy, transformation training. What's that all about?
Yeah, so I mean, so everybody's got, their thing that they're trying to overcome in their lives, or so I help people through various approaches. I incorporate mindfulness into almost everything that I do, but I work with people who want to transform their lives somehow. Maybe they just want to make it to the next level in their jobs. Maybe they want to improve something that's going on in their personal life or their family life. Maybe they do want to set a goal and go out and achieve some kind of fitness goal. So I apply these techniques that I've learned specifically through my experience as an ultra runner, adventure racer. But I've also, had training. I'm a professional coach. I went through schooling. I've studied, all kinds of forms of meditation. I've studied, Buddhism and shamanism, and so I take just a lot of different approaches to help people really break down the things that are holding them back in life, and I help them, make that leap to that next level.
We might be smack dab in the middle of winter these days, but spring is really just right around the corner. Make sure you've got one of our lightweight camp stoves ready to go in your pack for when the weather starts turning warmer. Both the 180 stove and the 180 flame are designed to burn the abundant wood fuels you find on the ground instead of requiring you to haul in heavy, messy camp fuels. Take a minute to head on over to our site at www.180tack.com to check out these American-made stoves that are built to last. You'll be helping us, and you'll be helping the Adventure Sports Podcast. Thanks, guys.
Well, let's dial back into adventure a little bit more. I love the way that you have used adventure to grow personally. I love the way that you use adventure to help other people to learn more about what this whole experience is all about. But we've got to dive into some of your own personal adventure stories just because you've done so much. So how about sharing with us one of the best days, an experience that just blew your mind?
Well, I mean, probably the pinnacle for me was crossing the finish line of Primal Quest in 2003 in the Sierra Nevada mountains with the team, competing with a really wonderful, amazing friend of mine, Eric Weinmeier. He's somebody who is very well known in the adventure community, and he's the first blind man to summit Mount Everest and climb the 7 summits. That to me was an amazing journey on a number of levels, because every step of the way we were engaging in things that we'd never done before. So Eric and our other teammate, Jeff Evans, who helped guide Eric to the summit of Everest, joined our team with myself and one of my other teammates, Cami Rancheto, who was a woman that I'd raced with many times over the years. So they'd never done an adventure race before. We'd never guided a blind person before. And we were every step of the way learning and trying to figure out systems, because nobody had done this before. This was the first time a blind person had competed in an adventure race. And we were competing in, our goal was to compete in one of the premier adventure races in the world, one of the toughest endurance races in the world, the Primal Quest. So we embarked on a lot of training, and we did a practice race up in Greenland, which is an amazing place to visit. It's probably one of the most awe-inspiring places I've ever visited. The landscapes are so dramatic. And it's just an adventure getting to Greenland, flying into Iceland and taking a prop plane out, across the Arctic Ocean, and then taking speedboats through the pack ice to this little island of Almasalik, which is very famous. Almasalik is very famous. It used to be a launching point for a lot of North Pole expeditions. And I think it's famous because it's the place where Admiral Byrd launched his first successful balloon expedition to the North Pole. So it's an amazing place. It's an island that sits off the coast of Greenland, and so you can see the ice shelf rising on the mainland. The ice shelf just kind of rises out of the ocean and rises up, and it's an amazing sight. But the island is very rocky and precipitous, and it's very varied terrain. And there's some glaciers and rivers and things like that. But, for Eric, that was an incredible challenge. I mean, the terrain was not suited to him. It was he had commented at one point, we had to do this really short section on day 2 or 3 of the race, which was only 4 kilometers long, but it was this coasteering section along the coast of the island, and it was all completely off camber, and it was all like it was a huge maze of jumbled granite, talus, boulders, and rocks. And after the fact, Eric commented that was harder than going through the Khumbu Icefall on Mount Everest. and it beat the hell out of him. His shins were beat up, his knees were beat up. We did our best to kind of find the path of least resistance in that race. I mean, this was what we were learning. The fastest path or the best path wasn't the shortest route. We had to find the best route. So there was these added elements for our team of finding route finding. We all had purpose and jobs, on this team to help get our whole team through this. But I think by the end of day 3, we gotten to the point where we realized that if we had kept going, we might have injured ourselves, or we might have gotten to the point where Eric was injured. So we chose to quit. And for an adventure racer, boy, that's a tough pill to swallow because, we just never quit. I mean, the quitting just was never in our vocabulary. So, but it was something that probably more than any experience in my life I learned from. It wasn't quitting. It was kind of the surrendering that I describe. It was intelligence. I mean, we learned from the experience that, this was the best decision for us. And it turns out 6 weeks later, we flew out to the Sierra Nevadas of California to compete in this Primal Quest. And, everything that we had learned over the past year of training and going through all those challenges in Greenland propelled us through this incredible challenge of the race in Primal Quest. And, we encountered lots of challenge in that race, bikes breaking down and losing paddles and in rapids. And, we hit a point where, we get to this climbing section in the race, and these adventure races are known for having these spectacular rope sections. And this race had a spectacular rope section where we were going to ascend fixed ropes up a 1,500-foot granite face. And then we were going to do a Tyrolean traverse, across a 2,000-foot canyon to the other side, and then rappel 700 feet down.
Wow.
Like this amazing thing. And so, we're getting followed. This was being filmed by CBS Sports. And so, they're following us and filming us, and they're like, oh man, we really want to film. This is what we want to film. We want to see Eric climbing. And we got to a point in that race where we got to the rope section and we hit a bottleneck, and this was classic in adventure races where, teams just kind of arrive and there's only so many ropes. So we've got to wait. So we get to, and we get there and it's a huge wait to get on the ropes. And we're confronted with this decision of whether to wait or to take a penalty and go around that section of the race and continue forward. And, these races have time limits, so this was our biggest concern with racing with Eric was, we knew he could do it. It was a matter of time, because he was slower. We were slower as a team. So it was tough. Eric and Jeff wanted to jug those ropes, and all the people with the cameras wanted to film that, and I'm sitting there, as kind of the de facto captain of the team, saying, looking down the road and saying, well, what's best? How are we going to finish the race? And so we made the decision to take the penalty and walk around. And it ended up being the thing that saved the whole race. Because if we had not done that, if we had not taken that penalty, we wouldn't have finished the race before the cutoff, because we actually ended up finishing the race 2 hours before the final cutoff. So, um, we actually got to the opposite end of Lake Tahoe, and we actually had, this was a race where we had to serve out all those penalties. So before we could do the final paddle across Lake Tahoe, so we got to the western shore of Lake Tahoe, in the morning, and we were looking forward to this beautiful paddle across Lake Tahoe, during the day, and getting to the opposite shore and stepping onto that beach in the sunshine with all these people cheering us on. And it turns out we had to sit there and serve a 17-hour penalty.
Oh.
So we sat there for 17 hours, and then we got to paddle across Lake Tahoe in the middle of the night. And it was freezing out, and we were tired, and we stepped onto the shore of of the eastern shore of Lake Tahoe at something like 4 a.m. And there was just a very small group of people there, and but that moment was probably a highlight for me in my life, and it was really a culmination of not just what I'd learned, about doing these races, but the opportunity to participate and have an experience with people like Eric and Jeff and Cami, who had their experiences and bringing everything they knew about overcoming adversity and challenge to that event. So, these guys, these people are still a part of my life. In fact, Eric and Jeff and Kimmy are 3 people who've, maybe supported me more than anybody in my battle with cancer.
That's amazing. Isn't it just amazing how the friendships grow so deep when you go through these challenges together? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing like these friendships, and friends come and go in life, and it's easy for us, to sometimes friendships are rocky.
Sure.
But the best friendships endure, and the best friendships are the ones where you learn that we're both students and we're both teachers. We're teaching and simultaneously learning from one another.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing stuff. We've run the clock. Our time is about gone. But we should let everybody know how they can get more information about your coaching and going on these transformative adventures with you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So like you said earlier, you can visit me at awakenadventures.com. You can follow me on social. You can link to my Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff, where I share a lot of insights and articles on occasion. You can also sign up, get a free coaching session with me, a free consultation, if it's something you're interested in, working with me as a coach. And then obviously there's always opportunity to come with me on an adventure. I'm leaving shortly to go on a sailing adventure in Palawan, Philippines. And then we're heading back to Peru in June, and then in September we're going to Utah. And as it turns out, we're doing a multisport trip, which is whitewater kayaking, mountain biking, and canyoneering. And we're actually going to be exploring the Bears Ears, which is just came up this week, obviously, because there's a lot of controversy on what's going on with our national parks and our national monuments. And, so I really encourage people to not only get out there and find your passion, but to really go out there and support protecting, these amazing, beautiful lands that we have here, and use your passion to support, environmental protections.
Right. Got to save it for those that follow, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It is the amazing, amazing world we have is just too precious to think of it in a disposable way. We just can't do that. It's just too precious. Yeah. Well, Rob, thank you so much for sharing your stories and your perspective and some about your adventures. I encourage our listeners to go to awakenedadventures.com, where you can get a whole lot more information. But Rob, it's been a real pleasure hearing from you today.
Thanks so much, Kurt. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Oh, you bet. And as always, for all of our listeners out there, thank you so much for listening in. And until the next show, make sure that you do get out there, have some fun.
Coming up on Monday's episode, we will have Robert and Daisy Kunstetter on to talk about life and adventure in South America. Until then, get out and have some fun. You're not leaving yet, are you? Why don't you do yourself and us a favor and become a member of our Facebook group? In there, you can hear about some awesome adventures, learn how to do new ones, and share what you've been up to. And while you're on the web, do us a favor and go over to patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast and consider becoming a patron to help the show. You can also find a link to Patreon at the top of our website at adventuresportspodcast.com. As always, thanks for listening, guys.